Hello and a warm welcome to everyone. Myself Manish Prabhakar Singh, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Model College, Kharsawa, affiliated to Kolhan University, Chaibasa. In the previous part, we talked about the beginning of the early Tudor dynasty, the impact of Renaissance and Reformation, along with some of the major writers. This part will continue from where we left, dealing with more writers like Thomas Malory, Thomas Wyatt, and Earl of Surrey, who, according to some historians, are considered as the father of English sonnets. So let's begin. Thomas Malory, one of the greatest writers of the period, who wrote his stories in prison, turned first the English literative romances known as Morte Arthur and then a variety of French romances about Arthur's knight into a stories of tales of Arthur and his knights in which the ideals of practical chivalry replace the sentimental and doctrinal elements which figure so prominently in his French sources. William Caxton was the one who published the work in 1485, giving it a false unity by applying the title of the last group of stories, the Morte Arthur Songe Gordon, to the whole collection. This work is in 8 tales. The first is the comprehensive tale of King Arthur, which begins with the death of Uther Pendragon and Arthur's accession. The second book, derived from Morte Arthur, tells of Arthur's struggle against the claims of Rome, the battle between Arthur and Lucius, Arthur's triumph and coronation as emperor in Rome. The third, the noble tale of Sir Lancelot du Lake, turns for its hero from Arthur to Sir Lancelot and talks about him as an active and gallant knight. It describes his adventures. The fourth book, The Tale of Sir Gareth of Orkney, is from an unknown French source of a questing knight. The fifth book is the book of Sir Tristan Delenn. It is a simplified and reduced version of the French prose romance of Tristram. It is made up of many separate adventures and is divided into 17 parts. The noble tale of the Sengel is translated from the French Queste del Saint Graal. The book of Sir Lancelot and Queen Guinevere is partly based on the Morte Arthur and partly in the English tangic Morte Arthur. The last book is The Death of Arthur, which talks about the death of King Arthur, in which the round table is destroyed and Guinevere retrieved to a nunnery. Lancelot decides to forsake the world too, out of love and despair rather than from a religious impulse. Guinevere dies repentant, and Lancelot follows soon after. If you look at the writing style, he simplifies, tightens up, adds weight and precision, and at the same time, a conversational flow. He gives us the Arthurian stories set to an uncomplicated chivalric morality. If you look at the English poetry of this time, you will find that it was an imitation of Italian models and it brought difficulties of its own. Thomas Wyatt and Henry Howard, also commonly known as Earl of Surrey, the two biggest names who introduced sonnets in England, and their poems were published in 1557 in an anthology, Tuttle's Miscellany. As Ifor Evans writes, Wyatt and Surrey have so often been grouped together in histories of literature that they seem almost as inseparably linked to the names of two drapers. Sir Thomas Wyatt was an English politician, ambassador, and a lyric poet. He was a courtier and diplomat who kept his head, in more than one sense of the word, in the troubled court of Henry VIII. Wyatt was the older of the two, and in one sense, it can be said that with him, modern English poetry begins. In Tuttle's Miscellany, there are 96 poems in total, which is attributed to Thomas Wyatt. Henry Howard, who was given the courtesy title Earl of Surrey in 1524, was a nobleman who went to scaffold at the age of 30. He was educated both at English and French courts in a consciously aristocratic tradition. The first 36 poems in Tuttle's miscellany are by Surrey, and 4 more are included later in the book. Surrey's nature imagery is livelier in his sonnets, and he uses the form ABAB, CDCD, EFEF, which later became known as Shakespearean form. Along the sonnets, he also experimented with Poulter's measure, which became very popular in the 16th century, and it consists of 12 and 14 syllable lines alternating. The most pioneering achievement of Surrey was his use of blank verse, which he used in the translation of the second and fourth book of Virgil's Aeneid. Wyatt and Surrey are greater in the traditions which they started than in the poetry which they themselves produced. They have often been underestimated. The most important person during this time was Richard Tuttle, who was an English publisher and influential member of the legal community. His majority of the printing was centered on legal documents, but he is most known for a collection he edited and printed, that is, Tuttle's Miscellany. It was published into 9 editions between 1557 and 1587. The work was published, as Tuttle goes on to say, to the honor of the English language and for profit of the studious of English eloquence. William Dunbar, a brilliant and versatile craftsman, was a Scottish marquard poet. He was closely associated with the court of King James IV, who imposed his own character with a vigor that is sometimes startling on everything he wrote. In his most formal poetry, Dunbar employed an aureate Scots, drawing directly on Latin for the weightier part of its vocabulary. His famous poems, like Tristan and the Royce, employs the medieval rose traditions. The Golden Taj is his most ambitious poem, which is a dream allegory. His Dance of the Seven Deadly Sins is a fast moving 12-line stanza which is both brilliantly pictorial and full of movement, one of the most impressive and original rendering of the common medieval theme. His best known poem is his Lament for the Macaws. He was a great metrist and used an extraordinary variety of stanza forms. If you look at the period, Renaissance made an important impact. It made it more amenable not only to treatment by philosophers but also to hardly by poets and dramatists. The full impact of Renaissance was felt in the Elizabethan age, the golden period of English literature, with the highlight being William Shakespeare. Thank you for listening.